was the first night of winter. Thick snow had started to fall in the mountains of Germany. The cold wind howled like a warning through the trees. On the highway, a tour bus made its way up the mountain road, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Inside the bus, 17 tourists sat quietly. Some were sleeping, some were looking at their phones, and others stared out the window at the falling snow. The mood was calm, even peaceful. The driver, Mr. Kraus, was an older man with tired eyes. He had been driving for hours without a break. But the travel company had asked him to take this group to the mountain lodge before midnight. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard. 11:03 p.m. "I'll be there soon," he said to himself. Behind him sat Anna, a 25-year-old woman from Sweden. She was quiet and polite, traveling alone. She held a photo in her hands, an old picture of her and her younger sister who had died the year before. This trip was meant to help her heal. Next to her sat Marcus and Layla, a married couple from the UK. They were arguing in low voices about something, as they always did. Behind them, two friends from Spain, Diego and Lucia, played music through their shared earphones. Everyone had their own story. No one noticed the sky turning darker. No one saw the fog slowly creeping across the road ahead. At 11:14 p.m., something strange happened. The lights on the bus flickered once, twice, then came back on. The tourists looked around. A few chuckled nervously. Mr. Kraus tapped the dashboard. "Old bus," he muttered. Then the fog came. Thick, white, heavy. It was not normal fog. It moved strangely, like it was alive. The world outside disappeared. Mr. Kraus slowed the bus to a crawl. He turned on the high beams, but they couldn't cut through the fog. Suddenly, a shape appeared on the road. A black car stopped in the middle of the highway. No lights, no sound. Mr. Kraus hit the brakes, but it was too late. Crash! The bus slammed into the black car. Glass shattered. People screamed. The bus swerved, slid on the icy road, and rolled off the edge into a ditch. It flipped twice before landing on its side. Then, silence. Only the sound of the engine ticking and snow falling outside. 20 minutes later, police and rescue teams arrived. It was chaos, flashing lights, stretchers, shouts in German. The bus was broken, bent like a crushed can. 13 bodies were found. Some were alive, some were not. The officer in charge, Captain Weiss, looked at the list of names sent by the travel company. There were 12 names, but they had 13 people. "Is this a mistake?" he asked his partner. "No," the partner said. "The company confirmed it. Only 12 were booked on the tour." "Then who is the 13th? The survivors were confused, scared. No one remembered a stranger. But a few people, Anna, Marcus, and Lucia, started whispering the same thing. "Saw someone walking between the cars just before the crash," said Lucia. "A woman, in black, no face." Captain Weiss raised his eyebrows. "No face?" "She had no eyes, no mouth, just skin." Anna began to cry. She looked at me. I think she whispered something." "What did she say?" the officer asked. Anna shook her head, her lips trembling. She said, "One more, then I will rest." Captain Weiss felt a cold chill down his spine. That night, Anna was taken to the hospital. She was alive, but very weak. The doctors said her body was in shock. At 3:17 a.m., Anna died in her sleep. The cause? Unknown. Her heart had simply stopped. In the morgue, her body was cold, pale, and her mouth was open, like she had been screaming. The morning after the crash was cold and gray. Snow covered the wrecked bus like a white blanket. Police. Tape surrounded the area. The black car that caused the crash was gone, taken to a lot for investigation. But something about it still bothered the police. Captain Weiss stood at the scene with a hot cup of coffee in his hand. He hadn't slept. His eyes were red. He looked again at the list of names. 12 people booked the tour. 13 were found. 1 is missing from the records. "Run it again," he told his assistant. Call the travel company. Check every passport. Someone doesn't belong. In the hospital, the survivors were still in shock. Marcus sat beside his wife, Layla, who had a bandage over her head. She kept asking the same question. Where is Anna? Anna's death had not been announced. Yet, the doctors didn't understand how such a healthy young woman could just die in her sleep. There were no injuries, no signs of sickness. Her heart had simply stopped. Lucia, the Spanish girl, kept whispering to herself. Diego tried to comfort her, but she wouldn't speak clearly. She only said one thing again and again. She walked through the fog. I saw her. She was not real. Later that day, Captain Weiss arrived at the hospital to speak with the survivors. They gathered in a small waiting room. The mood was quiet, heavy. Weiss stood in front of them with a notepad. I have some questions, he said. Simple ones. Please answer honestly. Everyone nodded slowly. He pointed to a young man sitting in the back. Your name? Daniel, he said. From Australia? And you? Lucia. From Spain. He went around the room one by one. 12 names. All matched the list. Then he asked, who was sitting next to Anna? No one answered. Did anyone see another passenger? A woman? Someone not in your group? Lucia raised her hand slowly. I saw her. She had long black hair. She wore a long coat. She didn't have a face. Some people gasped. Diego shook his head. Lucia, stop. You were in shock. I saw her, she said firmly. Before the crash. She walked past me in the aisle. She looked at me. Weiss wrote something down. She said something, Lucia continued. But I didn't understand. It was like a whisper in the fog. Layla spoke up. I saw her too. I thought she was just a local woman who got on the bus late. I didn't think about it until now. Weiss looked up. You saw her face? Layla shook her head. That's the thing, I didn't. It was blank. Weiss's hands went cold. He had heard of stories like this before, in small towns, on old roads, people who appeared and disappeared without a trace. But those were just ghost stories, weren't they? Later that night, the nurse on duty walked past the room where Anna's body was kept. She paused. The lights inside were flickering. She pushed, opened the door. Hello? Silence. The body was still there under the white sheet. But something was wrong. The tag on Anna's toe was missing. The nurse frowned. She stepped closer. The sheet was slightly pulled down. There were scratch marks on the table. Like fingernails had clawed the metal. The nurse gasped and backed away. Then she heard it, a whisper, close to her ear. One more. She ran out of the room screaming. Meanwhile, Captain Weiss received a call from the vehicle yard. Sir, said the officer on the phone. We checked the black car that caused the crash. There's a problem. What kind of problem? There's no engine inside. Weiss paused. What? No engine, no seats. The car is completely empty, just a metal shell, like a fake car. Weiss felt his stomach turn. And sir, the license plate? It doesn't exist in any system. Not here. Not anywhere in Europe. Back in the hospital, Lucia woke up screaming in the middle of the night. She had a dream. She was standing on the same road. Fog everywhere. The black car sat in the middle of the street. The door opened, and Anna stepped out. But her face was gone. Her skin was smooth and pale, and she whispered something to Lucia. Now I'm part of the fog. 3 days had passed since the crash. The mountain town was quiet, but fear was growing among the people. Everyone had heard about the accident. Some called it tragic. Others said it was cursed. At the local hospital, Lucia was getting worse. She didn't sleep. She didn't eat. She just stared out the window all day. Diego, her friend, stayed by her side, trying to keep her calm. Lucia, he said softly, it's over. We're safe now. She didn't answer. Finally, she turned to him and said, "She's not gone. Anna is still here." Elsewhere in town, Captain Weiss met with an old woman named Greta. She had lived in the mountains all her life. Weiss had heard she knew local stories, strange ones. He brought a photo of Anna. "Have you seen her before?" he asked. Greta looked closely. Her eyes grew wide. She backed away. "No," she whispered. "Not her, but I've seen her shadow." Weiss frowned. "What do you mean?" Greta sat down slowly. "Years ago, before you were born, there was a crash, just like this one. Same road, same thick fog. People died, but one girl walked away. Her name was Elise. What happened to her? She disappeared the next day. No one found her body, but people started seeing her again. Not alive, as a shadow, on the road, in mirrors, in dreams." Weiss leaned in. "What does this have to do with Anna?" Greta looked at him, her voice shaking. "I think the road takes a soul each time, but it gives something back in return. That night in the hospital, strange things began to happen." The hallway lights flickered. Phones rang with no one on the other end. The temperature dropped, even though the heaters were on. Lucia was finally sleeping, with Diego in the chair next to her. But at 2:39 a.m. she woke up with a jolt. There was a shadow in the room, standing near the window. It looked like Anna, but her body was pale and stiff. Her head was tilted to the side. Her long black hair covered her face. Lucia couldn't move. Her body felt frozen. Anna raised one hand and pointed to the door, then she whispered, "You have to leave. Now." Lucia screamed. The nurses ran in, but there was no one by the window. Only the curtain moving gently, like someone had just been there. The next morning, Lucia begged Diego to leave with her. "We're not safe," she said. Something followed, us. He didn't believe her at first, but when he checked his phone, he froze. There was a new photo in his gallery. Fog everywhere. The black car sat in the middle of the street. The door opened and Anna stepped out, but her face was gone. Her skin was smooth and pale, and she whispered something to Lucia. "Now I'm part of the fog." 3 days had passed since the crash. The mountain town was quiet, but fear was growing among the people. Everyone had heard about the accident. Some called it tragic. Others said it was cursed. At the local hospital, Lucia was getting worse. She didn't sleep. She didn't eat. She just stared out the window all day. Diego, her friend, stayed by her side, trying to keep her calm. "Lucia," he said softly, "it's over. We're safe now." She didn't answer. Finally, she turned to him and said, "She's not gone. Anna is still here." Elsewhere in town, Captain Weiss met with an old woman named Greta. She had lived in the mountains all her life. Weiss had heard she knew local stories, strange ones. He brought a photo of Anna. "Have you seen her before?" he asked. Greta looked closely. Her eyes grew wide. She backed away. "No," she whispered. "Not her, but I've seen her shadow." Weiss frowned. "What do you mean?" Greta sat down slowly. "Years ago, before you were born, there was a crash, just like this one. Same road, same thick fog. People died, but one girl walked away. Her name was Elise. What happened to her? She disappeared the next day. No one found her body, but people started seeing her again, not alive, as a shadow, on the road, in mirrors, in dreams." Weiss leaned in. "What does this have to do with Anna?" Greta looked at him, her voice shaking. "I think the road takes a soul each time, but it gives something back in return. That night, in the hospital, strange things began to happen." The hallway lights flickered. Phones rang with no one on the other end. The temperature dropped, even though the heaters were on. Lucia was finally sleeping, with Diego in the chair next to her. But at 2:39 a.m. she woke up with a jolt. There was a shadow in the room, standing near the window. It looked like Anna, but her body was pale and stiff. Her head was tilted to the side. Her long black hair covered her face. Lucia couldn't move. Her body felt frozen. Anna raised one hand and pointed to the door, then she whispered, "You have to leave now." Lucia screamed. The nurses ran in, but there was no one by the window, only the curtain moving gently, like someone had just been there. The next morning, Lucia begged Diego to leave with her. "We're not safe," she said. "Something followed us." He didn't believe her at first, but when he checked his phone, he froze. There was a new photo in his gallery. It showed him sleeping in the hospital chair. And behind him was Anna. Her face was blank. Her mouth was open wide like she was screaming, but the room had been locked. No one could have taken that picture. Diego agreed. They had to get out. They left the hospital quickly, taking a taxi to a small hotel in the town. But Lucia knew it was useless. "She's not tied to the hospital," Lucia whispered. "She's tied to the road, to the crash." Back at the police station, Captain Weiss studied the crash reports again. He looked at the photo of the black car, the one with no engine, no seats, no ID. He zoomed in on the back window. There, barely visible in the glass, was a reflection, a face. It was Anna, but her eyes were black holes. Her mouth was stitched shut, and behind her stood another figure. One Weiss hadn't seen before, a tall woman with long arms and no face at all. Weiss dropped the photo. Suddenly, all the lights in the office went out. And from the hallway, he heard it, a voice like wind through the trees. "One more, Lucia." And Diego checked into an old mountain hotel. It was quiet, cold, and far from the highway. Lucia hoped it would be safe there, but deep inside she knew they were still being followed. The room had 2 small beds, faded curtains, and a window that faced the snowy forest. Diego tried to stay positive. "We'll rest here for a few days," he said. "Then go home." Lucia didn't answer. She sat by the window watching the trees. "She's in the fog," she whispered. "She's waiting." Back at the police station, Captain Weiss sat alone in his office. He kept looking at the strange photo, Anna's reflection in the window of the car. It wasn't a camera trick, it wasn't fake. And the figure behind Anna, the faceless woman, was even more terrifying. He picked up the phone and called Greta, the old woman from the mountain. "I need to know more," he said. "About the woman in the stories, the one with no face." There was a pause. Then Greta answered, "She has many names. We call her Die Nebelbraut, the bride of the fog." Weiss frowned. "What does she want?" "She wants pain. She waits on lonely roads for lost souls. She takes one and leaves a shadow behind." "A shadow?" "Yes," Greta said. "Not a ghost. Something worse, a copy. Empty, cold, hungry." Weiss's hand shook. "So Anna, the one we saw, she's not really Anna?" "No," Greta whispered. "She's what's left." That same night, Lucia woke up in the hotel room. The air was freezing. Her breath came out in white clouds. She looked to Diego's bed, but it was empty. "Diego?" she whispered. No answer. She stood up, her legs shaking. Her phone screen showed the time, 3:06 a.m. She heard something from the hallway. A soft knock, then another, then the sound of someone crying. She opened the door. The hallway was empty, but the fog was inside the hotel, thick, cold, moving. Lucia turned around and saw a figure at the end of the hallway. It was Diego. He was walking slowly, like he was sleepwalking. His eyes were open but blank. Lucia ran to him. "Diego, wake up!" He stopped walking. Slowly, his head turned toward her and he whispered, "She showed me the road." "What road?" He looked behind her. Lucia turned. The hallway was gone. Now, she stood on the same mountain road from the crash. But everything was wrong. The trees were dead, the sky was red, The black car stood in the middle of the road, and next to it stood Anna. But it wasn't Anna anymore. Her face was gone. Her hands were black. Her skin cracked like old paper. And beside her stood the bride of the fog. Tall. Pale. Wearing a long, white dress that moved even when there was no wind. No eyes. No mouth. Only smooth skin where her face should be. Lucia screamed. Suddenly she woke up in the hotel room, back in bed, heart racing, soaked in sweat. Diego was still sleeping beside her. She looked at her phone again. 6 a.m., exactly the same. Meanwhile, in the police station, Captain Weiss went through Old Town records. He found something that made his skin crawl. There had been 5 crashes on the same highway in the past 40 years. Every time there was heavy fog. Every time at least one person went missing or died in a strange way. And in every crash report, there was a sketch from survivors, a woman in a long white dress. No face. She had always been there. Back in the hotel, Lucia checked the hallway in the morning. No fog, no shadows, just an old man pushing a cleaning cart. She turned to go back inside, but stopped. Someone had written something on her door with a black marker. One more. Her hands shook. Her voice was barely a whisper. She's not finished. Lucia and Diego left the hotel early in the morning. They didn't speak much. Both were tired, pale, and quiet. The message on the hotel door, one more, was burned into Lucia's memory. She knew what it meant. The fog wasn't finished with them. They took a bus down to the nearest city. No cars, no highways, just crowded streets, people, and noise. Lucia thought maybe, just maybe, they could disappear into the crowd, hide from whatever was chasing them, but fear followed them everywhere. Back in the police station, Captain Weiss pored over the crash reports again. He made a list of all the victims from the 5 old accidents on the same road. There was something strange. Each crash had a different number of people, but in every case, there was always one extra person who didn't belong. Someone who wasn't. On the list, someone no one remembered clearly, and after every crash, that extra person either vanished or died in a strange way. He checked the names from the most recent crash, 12 names from the tour company, 13 people found. Anna had been the extra, but now Anna was gone. Or something that looked like her was still here. Weiss sat back in his chair and whispered, "She was chosen. Now it's happening again." In the city, Lucia sat in a small cafe with Diego. She hadn't slept all night. "I think she's picking the next one," she said. Diego frowned. "Who?" "The woman in the fog. The bride." Diego shook his head. "It was a dream, Lucia." "No," she whispered. "It was more than that. She showed me the road again, the car, the dead forest, and Anna was there. She said, 'It needs one more.'" "One more for what?" "I don't know." Lucia pulled something from her jacket. A folded piece of paper. "I found this in my bag this morning." Diego opened it. His hands began to shake. It was a list of names. All the names of the people on the tour bus, including his name. Lucia pointed to the bottom. There was one blank line left. "Do you see it?" she asked. Diego nodded, scared. "It's not finished." Back at the morgue, the body of Anna had been moved to a city facility. A young pathologist, named Eric, was assigned to recheck the cause of death. He opened the drawer and pulled the sheet off her face. He froze. Anna's eyes were open, her mouth too, but her mouth had been stitched closed in the original autopsy report. That was written by the doctor in the mountain hospital. Now it was wide open, like she had been screaming. Eric stepped back. His hands were shaking. Then he heard a whisper. Soft. Cold. Right in his ear. One more. The lights went out. Later, that night, Captain Weiss called Lucia. "I found something," he said. "I need you to meet me. It's important." Lucia and Diego met him at a small library in the city. He brought them old photos and files from the last 4 accidents. He laid them out on the table. Each photo showed the crash site, and in the background of every single one, sometimes in the fog, sometimes in the reflection of a car, was the same woman. Tall, pale, wearing white, no face. "She's been there all along," Weiss said. "For decades." Lucia touched the last photo. "She's collecting them." Diego frowned. "Collecting what?" "Souls," she whispered. "Or maybe just pain. I don't know. But every time one becomes part of the fog, like Anna. And then it starts again." Weiss leaned forward. "There's something else. Look at this." He handed them an old newspaper from 1973. "Tourist bus crashes in fog. 14 dead, 1 missing." Below the headline was a black and white photo of the victims' names. Lucia's hand trembled. There was a name at the bottom. Lucia Fernandez. She gasped. "That's my name." Weiss nodded. "And the woman listed as missing?" He pointed. "Anna Götze." Lucia looked up, her eyes wide. "That's not possible. Anna died this week." Weiss spoke slowly. "I don't think that was the first Anna. I think the one on your butt was already part of it." Lucia stood up. "Then who's next?" Everyone fell silent. Diego looked down at the list again. The blank line at the bottom was no longer blank. A name had appeared in messy black ink. Diego Marquez. His hands began to shake. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Somewhere outside, the fog began to move again. Thick, heavy, alive. And inside it, a car engine started to hum, even though the car had no engine at all. The room went silent. Diego stared at the paper on the table. His name was there, written in thick, dark ink on the last line of the list. No one had a pen. No one had touched the paper. But somehow, the name had appeared. Lucia grabbed his hand. "We need to go, now." Captain Weiss stood up too. "Wait, we need to think. If we leave without a plan, it'll find him faster." Diego shook his head. "It already found me." He showed them his phone. There was a new photo in his gallery. It showed him, sitting in that very room, this library. But behind him, through the dusty window, stood a tall figure in a white dress. No face, the bride of the fog. That night, Lucia and Diego checked into a new hotel. A tall building with lights, people, and cameras. They thought maybe the fog couldn't reach them there, but the fog didn't care about walls. It didn't need permission. At 2:17 a.m., Diego woke up alone in the bed. The room was cold. He looked at the window. It was open. Snow was blowing in. The curtain floated like a ghost in the wind. Then he heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Someone knocking on the bathroom mirror. Slow, soft, from the inside. He stood, shaking, and walked to the bathroom. The door was half open. He pushed it gently. No one was inside, but the mirror was fogged up. Words were written in the glass. "Get in the car." Diego stepped back, his heart racing. Lucia ran to him. "What's wrong?" He pointed. But the mirror was clean now. No fog, no words. He dropped to the floor, breathing fast. "She's coming for me," he whispered. "I saw the road again. I saw Anna. She said it's my turn." The next morning, Captain Weiss visited Greta again. The old woman in the mountain village, Kiwei, told her everything. Greta listened quietly. Then she said, "You can't run from the road. If your name is on the list, it will find you." "There has to be a way to stop it," Weiss said. "There's only one way," Greta replied. "One soul must take the place of another." "A trade?" "Yes," she whispered. "Someone must go willingly, or the fog will take what it wants." In the city, Lucia searched online for any stories, any records, any legends about the Bride of the Fog. She found one story from 1951. A local girl had vanished after a car crash in the same mountains. Her name? Elise Goetze, Anna's grandmother. Lucia gasped. She called Captain Weiss. She's not just a ghost, she's family. The curse started with her, Weiss answered slowly. Then maybe Anna was never meant to live. Maybe she was born already. Connected to the road, Lucia was quiet. Then she said, "If this keeps going, no one will survive. We have to end it." That night, Diego wrote a note. He left it on the hotel table before Lucia woke up. It said, "I'm sorry. I can't run anymore. I'll go to her before she comes for you. If someone must go, let it be me." Lucia screamed when she found the note. She ran outside into the cold morning, searching the streets, but Diego was already gone. He took a bus to the mountain road, the same one where the crash happened. The fog was waiting for him, thick, cold, whispering his name. He walked slowly onto the road. The snow crunched under his feet. Then he saw it, the black car. No lights, no driver. Just sitting in the middle of the road like it had been waiting forever. He stepped closer. The door opened by itself. Inside the car, he saw them all. Anna, Elise, the others who were taken before. Their faces were empty, their eyes hollow. They looked at him. Then the bride appeared, tall, pale, dressed in white. She held out her hand. "Get in," she whispered. Diego stepped forward, but something stopped him. Lucia, she had followed him. She stood behind him, crying. "Please," she begged. "Don't do this." "I have to," he said. "It won't stop until I do." Lucia held his hand tightly. "Then I'll go with you." "No," he said. "You have to live." Suddenly the fog thickened. The ground shook. The black car's engine roared, even though it had no engine. Then, it all went still. The bride vanished, the car disappeared, and Diego was gone. Only his footprints remained in the snow. Back in the city, the paper list was gone, burned to ash in Lucia's bag. The nightmare was over. For now. But in the fog, far away, a new list was being written, and the first name was already there. 1 week after Diego disappeared, the city returned to normal. The snow melted. The news stopped talking about the crash. People moved on. But Lucia didn't. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop thinking about the fog, the black car, and the final look on Diego's face before he vanished. She sat in a quiet park every morning, waiting for a sign, any sign that he was still alive. None came. At the police station, Captain Weiss stared at his wall of photos, crash victims, newspaper clippings, shadowy figures in mirrors and windows. He had tried to fight it. He had searched for the truth, but now he felt tired, beaten. Until one morning, a package arrived at his desk. No name, no return address. Inside was a burned piece of paper and a USB flash drive. The paper was black, but one thing remained clear. List. With one name at the top, Lucia Fernandez Weiss's heart dropped. He plugged the USB into his computer. It held one video file. The video began. A shaky recording of the mountain road. The same one where the bus had crashed. The camera moved, forward slowly, through the fog. Suddenly, the black car appeared. The door opened and someone stepped out, but the figure was covered in fog. The camera got closer. Lucia gasped. It was Diego, but his face was different, pale, blank. He stared into the camera and said one thing. "Lucia, the road is not finished." Then the screen turned to static. Weiss called Lucia right away. She met him in the station, her hands shaking. "He's alive," she said. "Not fully," Weiss replied. "That wasn't Diego. Not anymore." "Then what was it?" "I think he's become part of the fog, a shadow now, like Anna." Lucia stood up. "I need to go back to the road." "No," Weiss warned. "That's what it wants. If you go, it takes you." "I can't let him stay there," she said. I won't. That night, Lucia returned to her hotel. She packed a bag, flashlight, water, her journal. She pulled out a photo of her and Diego, taken on the bus before the crash. They were smiling. Now, only she remained. But as she zipped the bag closed, she noticed something strange. The mirror in the room had fogged up, and words appeared on the glass. Time's up. Meanwhile, Captain Weiss did something he had promised never to do. He went to the archives and pulled out a locked box marked Case 017, Elise Gutze, missing 1951. Inside were police reports, sketches, and one small notebook. It belonged to Elise. The last page was a message written in shaky German. The road needs us. It doesn't take. We give. Every time one goes willingly. If no one gives, it takes what it wants. Weiss translated it slowly. So this wasn't just a curse. It was a pattern. A deal. Every generation, someone had to go, or everyone would suffer. Back on the mountain, Lucia reached the crash site at night, the same curve in the road, the same trees, the same silence. She stood where the bus had flipped. The snow was fresh, but the memory still burned. Then she saw it. The black car waiting in the center of the road. Fog gathered around it. The door opened. Lucia stepped closer. Diego, she called. A figure stepped out. It looked like him, but when he spoke, the voice was cold. You shouldn't have come. Lucia's eyes filled with tears. I had to try. I'm not him anymore, the figure said. But I remember you? Then help me. Come back. I can't. Once you're part of the road, you stay forever. Lucia reached out, but something behind her moved. She turned, and there she was, the bride of the fog. Tall, white, faceless. The fog swirled around her feet. She raised one long hand and pointed to Lucia. It's your turn. Lucia took a deep breath, then she said, No, I won't let you choose, I will. She stepped toward the car. If someone had to go, she would give herself, willingly. But as she touched the door, something happened. The fog screamed. The bride let out a soundless cry. The car shook, the road cracked, and everything went white. Lucia woke up. She was lying on the side of the road. Morning light touched the trees. The car was gone. The fog was gone, and beside her was a note. You broke the pattern. The road is quiet. For now, Lucia cried. For Diego. For Anna. For all of them. The road had taken so much. But maybe, just maybe, she had ended it. Back in the city, Captain Weiss received a final envelope. Inside was a photo of the mountain road. Empty, peaceful, and on the back, a message written in soft pencil. There is no next name. 2 months had passed since Lucia walked away from the fog. Spring had arrived. The snow was gone. The mountains were quiet. The cursed road, now freshly paved, had been reopened. The government installed warning signs, cameras, and guardrails. The crash was marked as a tragic accident. Nothing more. No one spoke of the fog. No one mentioned the black car. But Lucia remembered, every day. Lucia now lived in a small town far from the mountains. She worked at a bookstore and tried to live a normal life. But something inside her had changed. She had dreams, strange dreams. The fog, the black car, the sound of tires skidding in the dark. And in every dream she saw Diego standing in the middle of the road reaching out to her. One night the dream changed. In it, Diego didn't reach out. He turned away, and he said, It's not over. Captain Weiss, too, had left the mountain town. He moved to the city and took a desk job. He had stopped investigating supernatural cases, but he never stopped watching the road. He kept a private file, one he never showed anyone. Inside it, a map marked with red X's, all the old crash sites, and a new one. A recent car crash had been reported just last week. No fog, no strange deaths. But Weiss noticed something odd. The photo of the crash showed the same curve on the road, but there was something in the background. A blurry shape. White. Tall. He zoomed in. The image was unclear, but his heart sank. It looked like a dress. Lucia visited the graveyard one rainy afternoon. There was no grave for Diego, no body ever found, but she left a flower under a tree where they used to sit. As she turned to leave, she saw something on the bench nearby. A piece of paper. She picked it up. It was damp from the rain, but she could still read it. You stopped the road, but not the hunger. Her hands began to shake. She turned the paper over. There, written in faded ink, was a name she didn't recognize, Eleanor Brandt. That night, she searched online. There was only one match. Eleanor Brandt, age 26, had died in a car crash 3 days ago, far from the mountains, in a coastal town. But the photo of the crash showed something strange. The back of the wrecked car had a shadow, barely visible. Lucia zoomed in. Her heart dropped. It was the bride. But this wasn't the old mountain road. It was a different road, a new place, and the bride had followed. Lucia called Captain Weiss. "She's moving," Lucia said. "The road may be quiet, but the fog found a new one." Weiss didn't sound surprised. "I thought it might. This isn't over." "No," Weiss agreed. "It's spreading." They met at a diner the next day. Lucia brought the photo. Weiss brought his map. He had marked 2 more crashes. Different towns, same strange signs. "I thought ending the pattern would stop it," Lucia said. "But it just broke the rules." Weiss nodded. "Now it's choosing new roads. New people." Lucia sat back in her chair. "It's not about the mountain anymore." "No," Weiss said. "It's about the ones who remember." That night, Lucia dreamed again. She stood in the middle of a highway. No snow, no trees, just endless road. And in the distance she saw it again, the black car. This time she walked toward it without fear. The door opened. Inside was Diego. He looked at her, calm. "You freed me," he said. "But she didn't leave?" Lucia asked. He shook his head. "No, she just changed the path." Lucia looked out the window. Behind her, a new road had formed. One she had never seen before. And beside it, people were walking. Not ghosts, not shadows. Real people. All heading toward the same place. The black car honked once, then she woke up. The next morning, Lucia found another note on her door. No one had seen who left it. It simply said, "It's your road now." She looked out at the street. Cars passed by. Kids played. The world looked normal. But deep inside, she knew the truth. The fog doesn't stay in one place. It follows those who try to leave. It learns. It waits. It spreads. Lucia sat alone in her small apartment. The city was loud outside. Cars, buses, sirens. Life moved on. But inside, everything felt still. The note on her door kept replaying in her mind. "It's your road now." She didn't understand what it meant, but she could feel it, the connection, the weight, the road inside her. That evening, Lucia went for a walk. She passed through busy streets, crossed intersections, watched strangers rushing by. Then she stopped. A street sign stood at the corner. It had no name, just a black shape drawn on it. A car, and next to it, a tall, white figure. Her skin turned, cold. The fog wasn't coming anymore. It was already here. At the police station, Captain Weiss sat at his desk for the last time. He was retiring the next day. No more cases, no more files. But one folder still sat open. Inside it were reports of 6 new crashes in 6 different towns. Each time the fog was mentioned. Each time one person was found dead or missing, with EY, no cause. Each time a car was seen, but never found. He picked up the phone. "Lucia?" he said. It's spreading faster. We have to act now, she answered calmly. I know. I feel it. That night, Lucia had the final dream. She stood in the middle of a highway again. But now she wasn't alone. Hundreds of people were walking behind her, quiet, empty-eyed, lost, and in the distance, the bride of the fog stood at the edge of the road. Lucia stepped forward. Why me? She asked. The bride didn't speak, but the fog behind her moved, shifting like wind and water. A voice came from the air. You opened the door. Lucia shook her head. I tried to stop you. You survived. Because I chose to. I gave myself. Now you belong to it. Lucia woke up in sweat, heart racing. The power was out. The city was silent. She looked outside. The streets were empty. No cars. No people. Only fog. Thick. Silent. Slowly rolling through the city like smoke. And then she heard it. A car horn. Far away. But getting closer. Lucia packed a bag again. But this time, not to run. To finish it. She met Weiss in front of the old police station. The fog was growing around them. He handed her a key. To what? She asked. There's an old tunnel beneath the first crash site, Weiss said. I found it years ago. Never told anyone. I think that's where it all started. Lucia nodded. Then that's where it ends. They drove in silence. Fog followed behind them. They reached the mountain and found the hidden tunnel. Inside it was cold and dark. The walls were damp. The air smelled of rust and earth. At the end of the tunnel they found something strange. An old blackened wedding dress hanging on the wall like a shadow. And beside it photos. Dozens of them. People from different times. All lost in crashes. Lucia touched one. It was Diego. Below it, written in blood-red ink, the chosen stay, the living carry the road. Weiss looked at her. What does it mean? Lucia stepped forward. I think I've become the next door, the next connection. Wherever I go, the fog follows. It's not tied to the road anymore, it's tied to me. He grabbed her arm. Then we stop it. Right here. Lucia looked at the dress. No, we don't stop it, we trap it. She took the wedding dress down, put it on. The cold cloth burned her skin, but she didn't scream. The tunnel began to shake. The fog screamed. The shadows inside the walls came alive. Weiss stepped back. Lucia, she turned to him, her eyes glowing white. Tell the world to stay off the road. Then the tunnel collapsed. Outside, the fog vanished. The road went quiet. The air cleared, and Weiss stood alone. 1 year later, a sign stood at the edge of the old mountain road. Road closed, no entry, danger zone below it. A fresh white flower, and a name scratched into the metal, Lucia Fernandez, the one who chose. But sometimes, when the fog is thick and the road is empty, drivers say they see a woman in white walking beside the road. Not scary, not hunting, just watching, waiting, and when they pass her, their car radio whispers one last warning. Keep driving, don't look back.